Please moderate.
Well, good afternoon. Go ahead and get started. Thank you for coming out on Friday afternoon. I'm John Antonio. I think I know most of you. I'm the interim dean of the Gallagher College of Engineering here. It's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Luciano Castillo. He's currently the Kinninger Chair Professor of Renewable Energy and Power Systems at Purdue University in Mechanical Engineering Department. Is that right? Previously, he was the inaugural Center Director, which I know what that means. It means you started it, you stood it up, of the National Wind Resource Center and the Don K. Clay Cash Distinguished Engineering Chair. That's a long title in wind energy at Texas Tech University. And and I know it's very windy in Lubbock, and you get sandblasted too for free. We both have something in common. We both were professors at Texas Tech and Purdue. So there seems to be a pattern here, at least initially. Prior to his time at Texas Tech, he was a professor at RPI for a number of years, also in aerospace and mechanical engineering. His research areas of interest include turbulence, renewable energy, and bioengineering. He's published over 100 publications, edited several books on renewable energy, and co-authored several patents. He's fellow of ASME, fellow of APS, and has received major awards for teaching, research, and several best paper awards I saw. Currently, he's the associate editor of Wind Engineering and Science Journal. He's passionate about inclusiveness and mentoring students and young faculty. He founded and organized two summer research institutes on renewable energy and medicine, which included students, faculty, and K-12 teachers. And for those contributions and many others, and impacts on inclusiveness, he received the 2016 McDonald Mentoring Award from ASME, and he was recently appointed in the School of Engineering. Their schools at Purdue are like our colleges, the Dean's Faculty Fellow for Hispanic Engagement. Today, he's going to talk to us about an intriguing topic on creating an energy corridor along the U.S.-Mexico border. Please help me welcome Dr. Castillo.
Thank you. I'm very honored to be here today, and thank you so much for coming here on Friday. I'm one of those guys that when somebody's doing a presentation, I'm always asking questions because I don't want to wait to the end. So please do that to me, okay? And I think that if we do that, we can have another fun. So it's good to be here today. And this is something that I'm very, very passionate. Actually, many years before, when I was at Texas Tech and I was moving to Purdue, this issue about the war came up, and I said, you know what? We should be able to do something that will add jobs to the region, right? To create opportunities to the region. And I wrote the proposal with a few friends, sent them to a billionaire. They didn't do anything with that. And then a year ago, I was flying to Puerto Rico. We had the shutdown. And I tried to give money in envelope to the TSA people. And they say, I'm so sorry, you cannot, everybody thanks the military person for their contribution. And I say, thank you so much for your service, because they were working for free. And I put the money in envelope. I said, this is for you. And they say, oh, no, you can't do that. And then, obviously, that's bad. But then I called my friends, and that's how we built the entire consortium. So many of the things that I have done in my life, it was not intentional. It was simply to try to help somebody else. And out of this, we see a lot of these stories. So this is something that when you're talking about border wars, this is not something that is so unique in the United States. Actually, if you look at Europe, Europeans are also talking about that. The left-hand side, this side, the left-hand side, obviously this is Mexico border. This one is in Bangladesh and India. And what is interesting, when you build walls, it's not only hard to get out, it's also hard to get back, right? So this one, actually, one of the books that I read, this little girl was going from India to Bangladesh for an engagement with her father. And the girl slipped and she died basically in this wire fence. Basically, they had to shut her down. And I read that and I could not believe the agony, not only of the girl, but of the father to watch his own daughter dying in agony. So these are something that is very social, And I think as engineers, sometimes we think we cannot solve social issues, but actually, we are problem solvers, right? We solve problems, and sometimes the government, they're not equipped with the knowledge we have. So I hope that today I can inspire you to look at this problem in a different way, but more importantly, to solve problems like this across the world. And this is basically, I will give you a glimpse of what we're trying to do here. So in this project, what we're trying to do, actually, if you think about it, we know the entire border states, all of these states here, are actually very arid regions, right? It's characterized by two things. First, a lot of energy, including natural gas. You have solar, you have wind, but you don't have a lot of water. So the idea here is that we want to integrate this strength, solar and wind, to actually take some of the water from the Gulf, some of the water from the Pacific, and along the border to actually bring water to the US-Mexico border. Now you have wind, you have energy, you have water, you have the means for precision agriculture. So we argue that by bringing energy, water, and food, you could actually create prosperity in the region and attract companies. At the end of the day, what we want to build is to build the biggest technological corridor in the region, in the 2,000 miles, okay? So we will talk a lot about it, and I will make the argument as to why this makes so much sense. And not only why does this solve this unique problem, but could be extended beyond US and Mexico border. Actually, if you visit Venezuela, I was there several times, you could see the problem there is actually a humanitarian crisis. So obviously, a lot of the things that sometimes we do is not by ourselves. I mean, and I will tell you this, I mean, sometimes I come with ideas that are really bad, ideas that are really good. At the end of the day, you have to work with other people. So these are some of my students and colleagues that work with me. And we have a consortium, actually. This consortium includes Arizona State and many people here. And one of the reasons why I'm here, because when I was at Purdue, I worked very closely with Tomas on this project. And so I hope that you get to see at the end of the day that not because I get to present or because I'm doing this, it means this is me, okay? This is a big team of very, very smart number of people, scientists, not only from the US, Mexico, but also from Colombia. I have a big consortium that we put in from Colombia as well. And this actually started a couple of years ago. I wrote a paper to explain the rationale why renewable energy is so important. Then later on, I called the editor and I say, hey, I have this idea. They wrote this article in Scientific American. Then my president wrote the article in Washington Post, and I could not even tell you, I used to be very intimidated to go and talk to the newspaper or to go to TV people, and I got so much fun out of that. So there was a lot of publications about this, and out of that is where you see everything that we're doing today, okay? So this has evolved since last year tremendously, but when you look at the US-Mexico border, you're talking about a border that the legal crossing is about 350 million people that cross legally between the two countries. You also have, in 2017 alone, about 415 deaths, mainly by hydration. And one of the things you don't know, maybe many of you do not know, Mexico is the third trading partner of the United States at $612 billion per year. This is only legal, okay? Think about it, the illegal. There's $500 billion on drugs that is crossing, and then $500 million on human smuggling. We're talking about a border that is, the transaction is close to $1 trillion. And what we believe here is that if you convert that zone into, instead of a wall, you could build something that creates even more value. You're talking over $1 trillion easily in trading between US and Mexico, if you could do this. What I wanted to do is not just to tell you about the bad things about it, but when you look at other countries in Latin America, most people actually, a lot of the migration is because people are in Central America and they're escaping a lot of the violence and they're crossing all this region. Think about if we could duplicate what we could create in this border in other borders in Latin America. What difference would it make in terms of the value? So everything I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna prove it to you, okay? For the majority of this stuff. There are things that we still have to figure out, But most of this stuff and the argument as to why we're using renewable energy, I will prove that to you, okay? So last year, that shutdown, according to Ford, was about $11 billion, okay? The 34 days that we were shut down. And there's some issues about the escaping, right? A lot of the families, this is the problem, they're escaping violence. But more than that, suppose this. Suppose you don't care about the energy corridor, suppose you don't care about any of that. But you care about one thing, which is the water. And the argument here is that at the very least, you're gonna bring to that region water security. This alone is a very important issue. In fact, when you think about energy and water, they're both interconnected. And that's the argument that I want to make right now today, okay? So I hope you get to see this. Look at these statistics, okay? So these in red represent the drought index over the past 14 years. And this was computed by county. So one of my postdocs computed this not only over the border state, over the entire United States. And you can see immediately that the dark red represents regions where you have severe drought. The main conclusion you could get from that graph is that the southern western state actually is a desert. I mean, I don't need to show you the graph for you to see that, but the water issues are growing. In fact, I'm gonna show you this. Those border states has a lot of solar, I'm sorry, I cannot point this. It has tremendous solar and wind resources. And you can see you have tremendous solar, and I will show you soon. But look at these statistics. This is why you should be very concerned. Texas depends about 36% of the groundwater. Okay, this is using the aquifers. The aquifers, as you know very well, are getting lower and lower, and the salinity level is getting higher, meaning that that water is no longer fresh as you used to have it. But look at this one, Arizona, 43%. And look at New Mexico, 87%. Now think about it, please. Only United States. Suppose that all of those states, the drought or the climate change or whatever you want to believe or don't believe, suppose you don't have any water in those regions, then you could have a shift of population. Imagine all the people in the Southwest, all of a sudden, moving to the Midwest or the East Coast. What do you think it will happen, right? And this is what we're experiencing in many countries around the world. This one, and I'm going to show you this one. United States right now, okay, this is the statistics from 2016. Is using roughly 45% of our water in the cooling of the power plants. I'm going to show you this right now, okay? That alone, I call it a quiet crisis. And you're going to ask me, well, Luciano, this is talk about energy. And I will say, yes, it is about energy. And I'm going to show you something. The problem of energy is directly interconnected with the water. In fact, the prosperity of any nation depends on the access to the energy, okay? And that's why I'm connecting those two, okay? So remember that I was telling you that this is not unique to US-Mexico border. This one, and when I was in Colombia, and I know Felipe is one of the from Colombia, beautiful country. And you can see here, the left-hand side, this is the map of the wind resources. Everything in red means exceptional wind resources. This right here in red is the Caribbean. This is called the Caribbean low-level jet. And I'm going to talk a little bit about it today with some experiments, okay? All around here in red is along the Andes. So all around the Andes, you have exceptional wind resources as well. So the border with Colombia is right here. This is right here, Colombia. So you have 5 countries in the vicinity of Colombia and Venezuela, which means that most of the people, when they're moving, they pass back from Colombia to Panama, to the Caribbean, to Ecuador, to Peru and Brazil, for the most part, okay? The middle one represents the solar resources. Everything dark brown means exceptional wind, solar resources. You can see that the border state, you have a lot of great solar resources. So you have wind resources, you have solar resources. This in red, everything here is hydroelectric. Colombia has 75% of the energy comes from hydroelectric. So this is a no-winner, a good combination. Imagine you could combine hydroelectric, solar, and wind, and you could create a resiliency at a unique level. In fact, Colombia, from my point of view, could be one of the first countries or the only country in this hemisphere to be 100% renewable. And it's because of the resources they have. So here, you could see the migration. Last year alone, there was about 1.3, 1.6 million people in Colombia alone. Okay? This year, those numbers are expected to double. And I will tell you this, the article that we just wrote in Scientific American makes this argument. And it's very sad. So look at this. So you have this Caribbean low-level jet in this region, and then you have a lot of tremendous solar wind. What we're proposing is the same, right? You could take the advantages of solar wind, take water from the Caribbean and from the local regions to bring agriculture. So not only you could do precision agriculture, you could actually create jobs for people. At the end of the day, if you bring energy and you bring water, the whole idea is to create jobs for people, opportunities. That's what I call it, the opportunity corridor. I don't say the energy, food, water. It's opportunity corridor. This is what we were talking this morning, that people at the end of the day, they're looking for opportunities. But this problem, this one is more serious. Actually, this is a true humanitarian crisis. And we make the argument, actually, we're saying in the article that we wrote, think about this. You have children that are migrating, and you know that very well, Felipe. They come to Colombia. They don't have jobs. Where are they going to go? To crime. And many of these, not only the children, but the parents could be recruited for guerrillas, right? So this could be a problem that the United States and Canada could have in our own backyard. So this is how serious we see this problem. And when I was in Peru, many of you will go there, you will see people very upset at Venezuelans. And you will say, but come on, they are discriminating their own people. And it's not discriminating. Now when you see the perspective of the Colombians and Peruvian, you understand the perspective of the Europeans. Imagine when you have a sudden influx of people, all of a sudden, and you have social benefits and some benefit for people, how you're going to absorb all of that in a short time, okay? And this is part of the problem. And what we argue, if you look at this, and this is even more interesting, and I know many of you are working in Peru, in Arequipa. So this is actually the solar, the one on the left-hand side is the solar photovoltaic resource. And Arequipa is in this region right here. Right here in the coast of the desert. All of this region, all of the coast in Peru has one of the best solar resources in the hemisphere. Exceptional. At the same time, if you look at the wind, the middle one represents the wind resources. Everything red coming from Los Andes is exceptional wind resource. So now you have a complex topography in a region with great wind resources. And actually, if you look at the geothermal, all of the geothermal right here, you have a lot of volcanoes in the Arequipa region. And I know many of you are working with climate change, trying to understand what is going on in Peru. So that means that you could possibly integrate, think about it, solar wind with geothermal to create more resiliency in electricity production. In fact, I tell you this even more. Look at the border with Ecuador. This right here, if you look at Peru, the northern part of Peru, that means you could have solar energy, and you could have regions with wind, and you could have regions with geothermal. And now that means that you could bring water from the Pacific, pump it around the region, and now add what? Precision agriculture. You could add prosperity. And I'm not going to say this because it's an idea. I'm going to prove to you, when you look at all of the countries in the world, most of them, not all of them, that we could get data, you could see a direct correlation. Those countries where the energy access is very high, their quality of life is very high. Okay? So I'm going to prove that to you so you could see what we're trying to do here could be duplicated from different borders. And actually, if you look at the region, this is Tacna. This is the region where you will see Arequipa very close. And now this is a desert. This is close to Chile and Bolivia. But guess what? Those borders could be created in prosperity zone. You could actually prosper that even more than what you have. So our goal here is, can we identify one location where we could deploy a project and show great success. Because then we could duplicate this around the world. Imagine creating zone, and you were asking me how big this will be. Well, that depends on what type of policy we could put in place, right? Imagine borders could be protected by United Nations as zones of opportunity, duty-free zone, where businesses could grow. Instead of having poverty and crime, you could prosper that region. At the end of the day, what we're looking here is looking what are the strengths of each of those regions. And you could see from those maps that indeed Peru has those, okay? Now, what I want to make right now is the following argument. This is the paper that we wrote in 2018, making the argument why renewable energy makes sense. And it's not make sense because we're saving the planet. We always hear that argument. We do renewable because of climate change. The argument that I will show you a little glimpse of this, we do renewable for 3 reasons. Number 1, you will save millions and millions of gallons of water a year. Number 2, you will create a stronger economy because you have the opportunity for jobs is higher in renewable. Number 3, the climate, okay? But the most important one is the water. And when I talk about renewable energy, I cannot disjoin the importance of water and energy. In fact, if you look at the statistics, this is in Cape Town, South Africa, right? If you look here, you can see very clearly one of the major cities in Europe, right? 4 million people. And look what you have. You have water around. You have a tremendous solar resource. You have great wind, 8 meters per second, which means you could actually desalinate the water, right? And bring energy to the region. But no, this power plant actually uses water in the cooling process, but it's water that you don't have. So the argument that we're making is that we want to use renewable because you're protecting the water. That's the whole point, okay? And what is estimated here by 2025, 2/3 of major cities around the world will be facing this. 2/3. And Oklahoma, being a state with lack of water, you need to be thinking, the young generation should be thinking how you solve the water problem. You cannot solve the water problem without solving the energy problem, okay? And that's the whole argument that we're making here. So what we want to put here is, can renewable energy be a solution for the existing border challenges in US and Mexico, but also in Colombia and Venezuela? And actually, if you see those, and actually when I was looking at that, I come from parents of immigrants, so I understand how that is. I said, my children could have been one of those kids in the cages. Easy. Why not? I just got lucky, right? Well, not got lucky, I studied. But the point is that instead of me thinking about how can I worry about my Nature paper, we're writing a paper in Nature, but here, this poor family is facing this. And I think as engineers, a lot of the young generation could see engineering in a very unique ways, in ways that you could actually solve social problems. So the point here is this, to build prosperity corridors instead of walls. That's the whole argument here, and what I want to make here. And then, so the first part that I want to show you is the direct interconnection between water and energy. Okay, I'm going to prove that to you. I'm going to show you what is called energy poverty countries. I'm going to show you that a lot of the countries where lack of energy is so prevalent, guess what is going to happen in those regions? Mass migration. Okay, so I'm going to make that connection, and then at the end, I'm going to talk about the inequality factor. Okay, in that portion of the talk. Okay, so this is not in the future. This is not something that is going to happen. This is right now, right? We have about 7.3 billion people in India, in the world right now. We have about 1 billion people that do not have access to clean water. 1 billion, okay? 1. And then there is about 2.6 billion people that do not have access to basic sanitation. So sometimes when I hear the great intentions of Bill and Melinda Gates to bring vaccinations to Africa and many countries in India, and I think this is great. But you know what? That problem is coming because of the lack of energy. And I will show you why, okay? So if we solve the problem of water, we could solve the problem of the sanitation, right? But at the end, it's the problem of energy. And then it's estimated by 2020 this year, 135 people will die because of this, okay? So sometimes you throw the garbage in one side, far downstream, then the kids go and drink the water. Okay, so you could see that the sanitation is a big problem, but actually access to water. But access to water is the need to have the energy. It's to bring the water from where it is to the high population regions, okay? And I will show you all of this. So how many of you think that clean water is king or queen? Clean water? Okay. How many of you think that energy is king or queen? Yes. And I used to think before it was water. But actually, if you think carefully, is the issue, and I was trying to highlight a little bit of that. You have regions where the water is located, but then you have population centers here. Well, what is the question? You're not going to move the people there. We're going to transport that water from here to where the people are located. That requires energy. Energy. When you're looking at the food security, it's energy. It goes back to energy. Okay? And please read this book if you have a chance. This is about the fourth industrial revolution. They estimated, look at this. 1 billion people don't have access to water, right? What is the number of people that don't have electricity? 1.3. It's very close. Those numbers are very close. One is going together with the other. Okay? And so let's go back to this. So this is the Earth. If you look in proportions, all of that sphere represents the Earth. And this in blue will basically represent the entire sphere that contains the water, which is a small fraction. And the red portion represents the water that is salt. So 97.5% of our water is salt water, which is in the oceans everywhere. It's a big number. Only 2.5% is fresh water. But hold on the horses, because we had the glaciers, right? Only 0.8% of the fresh water is accessible. All right? So the question I want to ask, and when I was moving to Purdue, they invited me to give a talk in the agricultural department. I said, yeah, I can give one. But now I had to get the numbers. The question is how we're using the 0.8, some of that fraction in the United States, right? And if you look at this, you will see some surprises, okay? And then I think this is something that my postdoc Walter did, okay? No, I don't think he did, okay? This is actual data. This is not something that we took from somewhere, okay? The vertical axis represents billions of gallons of water that is withdrawn for that application per day. And then in the horizontal axis, in the United States, you have a different set of applications, okay? And if you see very clearly, you could see that self-supplied domestic mining, you have aquaculture, and when you go to irrigation, this number is about 32%. I was not surprised because I knew that was the number. We're using about 33% of our fresh water for irrigation, which is for food. That makes sense because many of us like it with steak, right? That's fine. But this is what I was surprised. That is the thermoelectric. This is the amount of water that in the United States will withdrawn to cool the power plant. So most of you are in engineering. So when you're looking at the Rankine cycle, you use a lot of the water to cool the whole system. The bigger the difference, the higher the efficiency. So you could see that about 33% of our water is fresh water. That's why when you see power plants, sometimes you see them near rivers, right? And the other water is saline water. This issue alone is what I call a quiet crisis. Think about it. You're in Oklahoma, you don't have water, but you're gonna use water that you don't have to cool your power plants to give you electricity. That's I call crazy, which is the same that happened in Cape Town. If you don't have the water, why would you use the water that you don't have to cool your power plants to give you electricity, which then you're gonna pump to get the water? You don't do that. And that's why what I wanna show you is that why renewable energy makes sense, okay? It's not because I do wind energy that I wanna put wind to everything. No, you need to do what makes sense, okay? So the question now is, how different energy power plants use water in the production of electricity. Does that make sense? How we're using different power, yes.
Yeah, so that water that's consumed or just cooled and then re-injected?
This is the one that we withdraw. It's not including the consumed.
Okay.
Yes. So portion of that, very good question. So portion of this water is actually returned back, okay? And I will make you the argument, okay? You make the argument. I have that graph, let me find it. What percent of that water that is returned under what conditions? Higher temperature, number one. Number two, contaminated, okay?
So that graph, that's water that's actually that's just water that's withdrawn.
Right, only withdrawn, right. That is only taken, yes. Very good, thank you. And if you look at the different power plants, look at this. So what I want to show you here, this is only in 2016. This is trillions of watt-hour per year of energy generation for electricity, okay? So everything in black represents the energy generation for every source. Everything in blue, this is supposed to be blue, is trillions of gallons of water per year. So, and this is the water that we're using in the electricity generation, okay? Some of that will be returned, some of that will be evaporated, okay? But the point here is that if you look carefully, three sources produces 84% of the electricity in the United States. So you have coal, you have natural gas, and you have nuclear. I want you to pay attention to nuclear. This is what I was talking this morning earlier with Petra. I think we were talking about this, that all of the nuclear reactors are water dragons. But can you design a nuclear reactor that will not use water? Then the story is different, okay? So you're using almost double of the water, but you're producing less than half, less than a little bit more than half of the energy. But look at this. Three sectors produce 84% of the electricity at what cost? 30 trillion gallons of water. This is what we should be talking about. Okay? Not coal versus energy, renewable, not coal versus. You should be talking about this issue. This is the most important problem you're dealing right now. The young generation will be facing. And if you look at other sources, if you look at hydroelectric and wind, they produce about 12% of the electricity and about 0%. Now, I'm going to point this out. This is not the energy that you get. Sometimes you get energy to get the natural gas. I'm not including the water there, okay? I'm only including in the generation of the electricity. Does that make sense? And if you look at the other sources, I want you to pay attention to this one. So from the small players, you have biopower, you have other sources. They produce about 4.4% of the electricity. And how much they consume? 0.5 trillion gallons of water a year. Who consumes most of that water? Well, look at this biofuel. That's why I oppose biofuel. Okay? And let me ask you another question. Well, if these guys are producing 84% of the electricity, they better be generating so many jobs for you, right? At least you get jobs. But let's look at that. And if you look at that, you will be very surprised. Well, you'll not be that surprised because you hear that in the news. But this is here in the vertical axis, in the number of jobs per gigawatt hour generated, okay? And then the horizontal, you have different sectors. What I want you to look is at this, when it says other, it simply means that there are people working in solar and oil or wind and different sectors, okay? So there are people working in multiple sectors, so we're gonna dump all of those into others. But what is important is that solar produced for every gigawatt hour of energy, you're gonna generate 6.65 jobs. That's a big number. If you compare that number, look at what happened to oil, 0.54, okay? Which is high, but these you're including truckers, you're including people that are moving. So these are not really big jobs. Look at wind, 0.45 for each. Bioenergy is about the same. And look at this. If you look at nuclear, remember this? Remember? Nuclear, coal, and natural gas produce what? 84% of the electricity. at the cost of what? 30 trillion gallons of water. Or how many jobs you generate? You could add those three together. That would not even come close to win. So that's bad. And this is what I'm saying all the time. That's the rationale for pushing renewable. Okay, and I'm not even talking about the climate, right? I'm only focusing on the economics and the jobs, in terms of jobs and in terms of the, yes.
So I'll be devil's advocate. So when I look at that solar with 6.5 FTE per gigawatt hour, what comes to me is it's an immature technology. It's inefficient, and that's why we need more people. So that would be another argument that maybe it's good and bad, right? We can improve that. In some ways, we want that number to come down.
It's an excellent point, actually. And part of that is the infrastructure, right? It's a lot of the infrastructure that has to be built. And once you build that infrastructure, it has to be optimized. So part of those jobs, it is true. That's part of I don't know how it will decay over time, because that would be an important question once you achieve them. But this is what happens with any new opportunities. You migrate to new opportunities, there will be a lot of opportunities, and later will decay as you create everything.
It may be a distributed system also. I mean, solar panels on roofs is a different type of thing than a coal mine.
And that's true. But at the same time, you have a lot of new infrastructure that we need to build, and that will kick in. Yes?
So on the previous slide where you showed the amount of water that was used, and you had solar and a bunch of things were near zero for the amount of water. Like the hydroelectric and wind. Are you putting the water for the production of the solar panels and for the
No. And good, very beautiful question. So the question is, we're adding the water in the manufacturing portion, only in the production of the electricity. And for that matter, we've been fair. We're doing the same for natural gas, right? We're not actually accounting. You think about the water in the acquisition of the natural gas. So we're not including that one. But if you do it, the use is for. That's why we put it that this is approximately zero. Approximately zero, because you still need the water to clean the solar panels, and you still need the water to clean the wind turbines when you get the mosquitoes. But so that's very important. Thank you. Very good point. So at the end of the day, this is very bad news for the government, thinking that you're going to create a lot of jobs for the people. Okay, and this because of the numbers. But look at this. If you look at the entire lower hemisphere, you're talking about that this is 3.5 billion people do not have access to proper electricity, meaning that the electricity they get is intermittent, it's on and off, on and off. This is the 1.3 billion people that I mentioned before. And remember, you have 1 billion people without access to clean water. The electricity and the access to water, they're correlated. Okay, and I'm going to show you now. So one of the students, and actually one of the summers that we had, I used some of my money to create this institute. It's just this analysis. When they were looking, typically, you normally look at the GDP, the gross domestic income, with energy expenditure. But I said, no, let's look at the Inequality Human Development Index, because it's measured inequality in the country. So it filters everything out. But it includes three things. It includes the income of the ability for that country to provide good paying jobs. It includes the years of schooling, access to university, access to education. And number three, life expectancy. What is that? Healthcare. Okay? So when you combine those three, we're going to look at the Human Inequality Adjusted Human Development Index, IHDI. Okay? We look at about 104 countries, and then we're going to look into that about the energy expenditure per capita for every country. If you look into that, you're going to look at something quite interesting. The first part you see is a mess, and I apologize about that, okay? But here, you could see blue are all the European countries and rich countries. I want you to look carefully at this is Iceland, okay? This is Iceland. Everybody here in pink is Africa. Everybody in green is Latin America. But what we decided to do, instead of doing it like that, we're gonna sort it out by continent. So if you take the south, east, and west of a continent and see what happened. So that was so if you look in the green, look at this in Africa. You have the East Africa, you have South, Central, West, and North Africa. Everybody, the energy expenditure for a kilogram of oil is very, very small per capita. And you see the index, everybody in the index, that is about 0.7, 0.75, are considered the rich countries, okay? So those are developing countries. So these are the rich countries, and all of the rich countries in Europe, all of them have a very high quality of life. And actually, if you look at the energy expenditure, it's very high. So that tells you something. Access to energy actually is correlated to what? A good quality of life. Okay? That's what it's telling you. And in fact, if you look at Central America, this is South, look at Mexico, where all the migration is happening in this region. Okay? And if you look at the coefficient of inequality, this measure the amount of inequality in a country, the story is quite intriguing. This is the coefficient of inequality, this measure per unit versus the energy expenditure. And again, the higher the values of the inequality, the more inequality exists. In other words, the difference between the rich and the poor becomes worse. The difference between access to education, between those ones that have versus those ones don't have, is very large. If you go to Latin America, a rich person there is very, very, very wealthy, right? And many countries, that's the same pattern. Look at these statistics. This is the same coefficient, and look at where Africa is. All of the countries in Africa, extremely high. Latin America, very high. As you go down, look at Europe. Europeans actually have more. What you have, access to education, access to healthcare, the level of inequality are not that high. As a result, you could see, and they have energy security, access to energy. Yes?
You could make a graph like this and make it GDP. So how do you separate whether it's GDP or it's the energy? Is the energy the driving force, or is the energy another reflection of the GDP?
This is a very beautiful point. And actually, when you include the GDP, you will see a direct correlation. And actually, the GDP, you could measure that in a way in the income, right? In the income part. But what is not including is the access to the energy. So one could include that, but it will not give you the whole picture. But you're correct. In a way, what you're trying to say is, well, you need to have the income, to have the energy, to have the rest. And in many ways, one could argue that. But if you look at, for example, rich countries, petro countries, like in the Middle East, they would have very high values. In other words, the energy, the Inequality Human Development Index versus the GDP, that's very high. However, the quality of life of their population is very spread, very broad. That's why we were looking at the Inequality Human Development Index, because it's actually measured the quality of the entire population over different sectors. So it is good to look into that, but it will not tell you the picture of the quality of the life of the citizen. That's a very good question, okay? And the part that I want you to look, especially the young generation, look at this. The lower this coefficient inequality, the better the country is. Look at Canada and look at the United States. That, you should be very worried about this. This. Of all the rich countries that has a lot of access to energy, United States is worse in terms of the inequality coefficient. Okay? And that was a few years ago. And so if you look at the mass migration, this is from 2000. The mass migration to rich countries in 2000 was 58%. Look what it is in 2017, 64%. So when a wealthy country is saying, I'm not going to help these people, well, that's okay. You're going to get them here. So the point here if you look at the data for the energy, the poor countries are the ones that have the less access to energy. Less access to energy gives you low quality of life. And if people are desperate, where do you think they're going to go? To where the wealth is. That's natural, or where perceived wealth is. So what I wanted to do now is now to go back to the issue of the border. And I'm so sorry, but I think now you could see the connection between mass migration and access to energy. In fact, now you could see why in the Southwest state, we were suggesting to push forward with what? Renewable energy. Because those are the states that lack the most water. So you don't want to use your water for the energy. So this is the border. And what we're suggesting is this. You can see here, Mexico, the third trading partner of the United States. And what we're doing is to replace the wall by creating an energy corridor that will include solar, wind. Of course, we had to include our frame for natural gas. And then is to call this opportunity corridor. In essence, is to convert a desert into an oasis. Imagine creating opportunities where you have precision agriculture. And in Peru, we're talking about putting in Arequipa in the desert. Why? Right? Why not? Right? So this is part of the whole concept. And this is the whole idea. You want to bring solar, and I'm so sorry because this schematic is in the wrong direction relative to the sun, but you can see that that's why you have to supervise very closely the graphic artists. They put it in the wrong direction. And they charge a lot. And then you have the wind. So the idea is this, think about it. If you have wind, you have sun, you have energy, you have water, what is the next part? Education, workforce development. And this is why in Venezuela, for example, we're saying, hey, how about if we bring education online in Spanish? Well, I speak Spanish, that's easy, right? So look at this data. This is the United States, I showed you some of it. This is the drought index. The darker the red color, it means that all the Southwest of the United States has, in one form or the other, a severity of water. Okay? Here is the solar irradiation in the Southwest. And look at what happened. All the Southwest, tremendous solar resources. And look at wind. I'm sorry, let me show you this one. Let me show you. I think I have it here. This is the wind. Everything in pink and red, purple and red. I'm sorry. That means that I have to. Everything in this is the energy corridor. This is where a lot of the low-level jet has been found. And it's a coincidence that you will find in the best regions where you have great wind, low-level jets. Okay, and this is why I was intrigued when I was in Texas Tech. I didn't waste my time. I went to the guys in atmospheric science and started learning from them a little bit about atmospheric flow, atmospheric boundary layers. And one of the things you learn from this, if you look at this map and you look at the solar, you could see that you have regions with wind, regions with great sun, and regions with drought. You could see, understand now why I'm connecting solar and wind. And now you don't have sun, but you still have wind. So integrating solar and wind create more resiliency in the production of electricity. But also, they're not using water, which I don't have. You see what I mean? So I'm using those sources to preserve my water. And if I preserve my water that I'm not using for the thermoelectric, I can now use what? Agriculture. And I can employ people. So I don't want to go take sun, I just want to be in my office. And look at this. These are the natural gas and oil deposits. You have natural gas. And I'm not opposing that. Hey, let's be friends. We're going to play together so that way we could win. So if you bring natural gas with solar and wind, you could create more resiliency over the entire region in terms of energy security. And then you're bringing water. Now you have water security. I cannot have water security without solving my energy security first. Okay? And this graph shows you the correlations. Everything in green is a correlation that we developed that allows you to find the optimal region where you could put solar and wind that preserve water. So these in green are regions where I can put solar and wind that will save water. Everything in yellow has to be only solar because you don't have enough wind. Does that make sense? So by using combinations, you could strategically define what are the optimal regions where solar will make more sense than wind, or where you could put both. At the end of the day, our objective is to create opportunities, but to preserve the water. Yes. Oh, I thought you were going to ask me a question. Okay. Yes.
So when you're looking at the previous picture, if you could have base your energy consumption mainly on solar, how do you sustain a 24-hour, 365 energy supply?
That's the point. That's the whole point why we're mixing solar with wind, right? But the reason I don't have the wind, what do you have? You could complement with natural gas. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that's why I'm not saying natural gas is the enemy. Hey, let's work together. And I'm going to bring it up when it makes sense to complement. Something that is very interesting here, the time zone. So I can produce electricity in this side when people are still sleeping in California. When they get up 2 hours later, I can send my energy a peak hour. And I can do the same vertically. But to answer to your question, we need the storage will come from integrating with other sources. And I think this morning we were talking about using solar thermal storage. There have to be other storage, but I think that integrating with natural gas in that sense will help. Good question. So this is why droughts are bad. When you get a tornado, you get a tornado for a day or two or sometimes a week, right? They come and go, or even hurricanes. Droughts are bad because they last 5 years. This is the severity factor. The higher the value, the more severe the drought, and here are the years. And you could see over cities. You could see some of them extend over 5 years. Imagine a severe drought extending over 10 years. Nobody is going to wait for the drought to overcome to do whatever you need to do. Okay? Drought and climate change that could exaggerate some of the drought level could cause mass migration. And that's why bringing back renewable makes a lot of sense. Okay? All right, let me talk to Petra about the low-level jet. Can I see you do this? Because I know that she's an expert in low-level jet, and I think that we could work on this.
You're the expert.
No, I'm not an expert. This is data that we took from atmospheric data, a 200-meter tower in Texas Tech. And this is the unstable boundary layer. This is typical boundary layer. You see in the atmosphere. This is where you have a low-level jet. So the low-level jet is characterized because you have a positive shear region, you have a peak, and I call that the nose of the jet. That's the maximum point. And then you have a region of negative shear. So if you think about it, if I'm right here, that means about 100 meters, I can go to speed that are 40 meters per second versus 4. Imagine the amount of energy you can produce for wind energy. Tremendous. And there's no coincidence why this energy corridor where you are, it has so much wind. You have low-level jet, a lot of them. And that means that if you look at this, everything in pink are regions where you have low-level jets. Do you remember the graph that I showed you? A lot of the countries in this region, what happened? They don't have a lot of electricity, but you have beautiful low-level jets. And that means that you have potentially 16 times more power generation at a given altitude than if you have a typical unstable atmosphere. And each of them, this is in the Great Plains, this is in Texas, you can see in Oklahoma. This is the Caribbean low-level jet that I showed you before. This is the South American low-level jet. And this goes along the Andes. And this is in Africa. So the whole idea is, how can I mimic, can I understand how much energy can I extract from that? So what we did, and this is why a lot of the work from Petra coincide with mine, is that I learned my lesson not to go to the field because the field measurements are so expensive, so difficult, and I don't want to do it. When I was in Texas, I spent everything there. This is the data actually. This is the height. Everything red are speed about 40 meters per second. Look at this. This is about 50 meters per second. You could see this is actual data. This is not simulated. This is not that I think. This is actual data from Texas. And you could see the low-level jets are observed about 50 meters in altitude. How high are the wind turbines? The hub is about 100 meters. So you're right inside of a low-level jet. Yes. Oh, I thought you were going to ask me a question. And this is the issue. Look at this. This is the power density of a low-level jet versus an unstable. It's about 16 times more. This could be a game changer. Now think about this. If I have a low-level jet in Colombia, in all of these regions, think about building big data centers in borders. Think about building data centers where you have a lot of cheap energy. And instead of building those data centers in China, I can build it in-house, okay? So this is what we did. We went to Bala Champagne. This is a paper that is under review in PNAS. And we have these small wind turbines. And we built the wind turbine in a way that is inside the positive shear region or is right at the node, like this, right at the nose. Or the turbines are so high that all you see is the negative shear. And then we were asking the question, will that produce the same energy? Right? Because not because I have low level, this means I'm going to get all of that energy. In some cases, you may have more, in others not. So my students, they build this, and then this is the array. We're trying to mimic. These are small turbines, okay? These are 12 centimeters in rotor diameter, very, very small. But we build it on scale. So we scale it down and go to the wind tunnel, and then you can prepare the inlet flow. So we build this in a way that this flow that enters, this flow is exactly the same profile as the low-level jet in the atmosphere. In the atmosphere from Texas, okay? But we could get it from Oklahoma as well. Because you have a lot of the better data, actually. I think you have better data than they did. Nothing offensive for them, but you have more data. At least I believe. So this black represents the data. The black dots is the Met Tower data. Okay, this is from the 200 Met Tower data. And you can see that everything in the blue represents the synthetic low-level jet. This is a fabricated low-level jet that we created in the wind tunnel. But we did it in a way that will generate the same shear as the atmosphere. This in blue represents the data on the unstable atmosphere, okay? And what is very characteristic of this low-level jet is that they don't have a lot of turbulence. So this is like almost like quasi-laminar flow. So the turbulent kinetic energy for the atmosphere in black is almost nothing, okay? But in a stable atmosphere, you have a lot of turbulence.
Not always like that.
Huh?
There are quite a lot of low-level jets where we actually have a lot of turbulence.
During the night.
Yeah. I can show you plots.
Yes. But we try to produce this one to represent this one.
Yeah.
And why is that? Because the atmosphere is stable.
Well, I mean, it's not always that stable. That's number one. And number two, your jet evolves over a large domain. And you actually get areas of convergence, and you can get quite a lot of mixing in these areas. I can show you something.
Yes. I would love to see it.
Yeah.
But remember, these are small in altitude, okay?
Yeah, this is
We're still
quite
40 to 100 meters. So this is what we did. So the first case that I'm going to show you is when the nose is at the peak of the turbine. So the entire turbine is in the positive shear. And then there's another case where the nose of the jet coincide with the hub height of the wind turbine. And if you look at that, these are PIV data. This is velocity measurements data in a 2D plane. And you can see that the weight deficit is smaller when you have this positive shear versus when the nose of the jet hit the turbine. So this here low speed, that means that in a jet that the nose hit the hub height, I cannot put the turbines too close to each other because you need to bring more energy. So you have to be bigger space. So that's bad news. So you don't want the turbines to hit the nose of the jet. Okay? And if you look at the power, if you write, the good thing with energy in engineering is that we could write kinetic energy equation. And if you write the kinetic energy equation, you will realize that this is U over U prime V prime. This is called the energy flux. This means the momentum of energy inside of the array. Okay? So you bring the energy from the top and into the wind farm. Now, if you look at the values, this is when we have the turbulence boundary layer. This is unstable. You don't bring a lot of energy. When you have the hub, at the hub, this is small. But when you have the jet at the top tip, or when you have the jet at the lower tip, you bring a lot of energy. In other words, when the jet hit the top tip of the wind turbine, because you bring a high speed, you have more energy into the wind farm, which means you have more ability to produce more power. Okay? And this is when you have only one single turbine. But if you have two wind turbines, one behind the other, you still have the same phenomenon.
So does that mean that in terms of wind farms, it would be best to have a combination of different heights
Yes.
of the wind turbines?
Yes, so you want the height to only be in two positions. The nose of the jet, the turbine underneath the jet, or above the jet.
But the jet, I mean, it's not, it varies every night.
Yes,
So,
yes. So if you have turbines that change in altitude, that would be the ideal case. The point here, the question we were trying to address, if you have a low-level jet, and the low-level jet is at the hub height, or is above or below the hub, which is better, right? And what we address here is that it's good below or above. What is bad is when the jet is hitting the hub height, because the shear here, the shear basically cancel each other out. Okay? And so if you look at the power, you could see the story. So this tells you this negative shear, meaning when the wind turbines are above the peak of the nose, or positive shear when the low high is below, they produce a lot. But when the turbulence is at the jet, this is at the peak, this is the power you produce. The ability to produce energy gets even worse than the unstable case. So that's the bad news. And so with this, I want to conclude. I'm so sorry I took so long. The most important part is that low-level jet offer an explored benefit for wind energy. So low-level jets is good news because you could produce tremendous amount of energy, more than 3 times at the edge of the boundary layer. So the edge of the boundary, you could add a lot of energy by using low-level jets. And then the final conclusion is the mass migration is growing around the world, and that what we need to do is to create opportunities, no walls. And the mass migration is correlated with the lack of energy and inequality in countries. And the final point is that renewable energy is very important because it saves water that is near the border. And with that, these are all of the people that help us in all of this. And then, well, I'm gonna close this shop because I want to show you the, that's what I was going to share with you. So with that, I really want to thank you for your time.
Thank you. More questions?
Yes.
I mean, it's a really intriguing idea to solve basically the wind, water, and social issues altogether, and that because of that you target the border regions. But I wonder, as a first step, could we just target a region away from the borders and prove that really by combining wind, solar, and maybe natural gas, and that this allows us to solve some of the water issues and that you can get this job creation by. So how important is it to go to a border region right away is basically my question.
Very good point. And in fact, that issue, we're solving that problem in Chula Vista. So we're taking a small region, instead of taking the whole border, it's taking a small region, and we're actually creating opportunities there. So there's a region close to Tijuana, and we're building an anchor project there. Small energy with water project, and demonstrate the whole concept there first. You're right, we don't need to go over the entire region, just take a small spot. Did I answer the question?
Yes.
Gio, then Bob, yes.
To build on Petra's question, I noticed that one of the areas where you had good wind and solar potential is in Northeast Arizona, and it almost exactly coincides with the Navajo and Hopi nations. And they are about to have a lot of trouble with producing coal-fired energy because of the changes that are being made with coal power production. That might be another place away from the border to try a project like this. Have you worked with any researchers in that region?
Yeah, we're in Arizona State, we're looking at collaborating there, and we're looking at that aspect to collaborating with the Navajos.